Welcome back to the deep dive. I am Anis Nayak. This is episode 2 of Prompt Engineering Masterclass, where we will see a framework, a 7 letter framework to design a prompt that will change the way you communicate with AI. Now, AI can do most of your tasks, but only if you ask it in a precisely right way. The output quality is just completely dependent on the input quality. So, to get the input quality right, we have this framework, what we call as RTCE framework. But for simplicity, we are calling it the 7 question checklist for AI superpowers. So let's begin. Now, this framework is really designed to take you from a basic user to 10x of the power. Like you'll be better at using AI by more than 10 times. So here's a complete framework for you, the RTCE framework. Now, R is for role. Now, role defines who the AI should be. T is for task, what the AI should do. C is for context, the background, the audience, the AI should presume. E is examples, what patterns AI uh, should give, or the examples that it has to suggest. F is format, how the output should look like. C is for constraints, the limits that we put on AI. And finally, S is for style, the tone, emotion the AI should adopt while giving you the response. So this is the framework. Now, what we are going to do in this video is we will take an example of an important milestone and a great achievement of India, the Chandrayaan 3, and we will build a prompt using this framework, a running prompt, so that you will understand it better. Now, the task is to explain Chandrayaan 3 to 10th grade students, the success of Chandrayaan 3, and we will build the prompt using the framework step by step. Now, the easiest way is to say, explain the success of Chandrayaan 3 to AI, but it would be very vague and obviously it's of minimal importance. And we will see how the output will be using this uh, weak prompt and a strong prompt, but in the next episode. Now, coming back to the framework, now we'll start with the first letter, that is R. Now, R stands for role. See, the role defines who should the AI be. Now, this is the fundamental part. When you assign a role, you are activating a specific knowledge pattern in the AI because AI is trained on vast amount of data. Now think of it like AI has hundreds or thousands of rooms without light in it. And when you assign a role, you are switching the light of a particular room. So like that, AI models contain training data from thousands or millions of different domains. Now defining a role focuses the AI's attention and it filters through that lens of being a specific, like an expert in a particular subject. For example, you can say uh, the AI should be a senior civil engineer with master's in structural engineering, or maybe it should act as a doctor with expertise in dental sciences or emergency medicine. Now, the various roles the AI can assume, right? So, uh, in our example of explaining Chandrayaan 3, now the role should be uh, the first line of the prompt would be act as an ISRO space scientist who loves explaining to young minds. Now, see, we are assigning a role of a ISRO space scientist. So, the AI suddenly assumes the role of a ISRO space scientist. Now, it has narrowed down its domain now. So, we now have our expert. We move on to task, that is T. Now, this is the core action where mm, the task happens. What we are making the expert actually do is, if you assign a task, you actually force it into a cognitive process. Now, task has two components. The first one is action, and the second one is outcome. Now, action is like there are many verbs that you can use in the action, like create, analyze, explain. Now, see, there's one word called critique. Now, when you say the AI to criticize or act as a critical expert, the outcome would be vastly different when you use it with the word analyze, right? So we now write the next part of our prompt. in our Chandrayaan-3 example. So firstly, we have written uh, the AI should act as an ISRO space scientist. See the next line, which is in yellow. So what we write as the task component is explain the success of Chandrayaan-3 and what it teaches about innovation. Now the AI has a professional identity and a clear analytical job to perform. Now the two letters of our 7-letter framework are done. Next comes the context. Now context is the background. Now it is the like it's absolutely critical because the same task gives you vastly different answers based on the environment or maybe the context that you provide. Like for example, if you ask an architect to explain a building's design, they need to know if they are presenting it to a person who is say an environmental expert or maybe a real estate developer. The information of the architect remains the same, but the delivery changes here. So that is what actually happens with AI when you give the context. This context can be developed using the classical 5W framework: the who, what, when, where, why. And to refine this context, this is a good checklist that you can use. Now, with the context, it stops the AI from generating generic output. Who defines the audience? What is the subject? When is the urgency? Where is the medium? And why is the purpose? Now, if you skip context, the AI just defaults to generic mode. Most of it would be like a Wikipedia-like answer. Coming to our example of Chandrayaan-3, now the context would be we have already set the role of a space scientist, but we need to specify the audience knowledge level. Now, their relationship to the subject. Now, our context has to be really detailed. The explanation, as you all know, is specifically for 10th grade students in India who have seen the national headlines of Chandrayaan-3 about the landing and all, but currently only possess a very shallow understanding of technical challenges or maybe historical significance. So the addition we do to our prompt is uh, explain the innovation to the 10th grade students in India who saw the headlines but want to understand more. You can see how the prompt is developing now into a beautiful command for an AI. The AI knows it has to connect the mission to reality, right? So next is examples. Now, examples is where you give the model a sample of what you want, or in this case, the type of comparison we need to bridge the complexity gap. Now, if you remember, Chandrayaan-3 mission had this very critical part in its mission. Now, if we ask, the critical part was the landing on the moon, the soft landing. Now, if we ask the AI to explain the challenge of soft landing, uh, in general terms, it is going to talk about the thrust, trajectory, escape velocity, and whatnot. Now, with this complex explanation, the students obviously will lose focus and attention. Now, that is why analogy or maybe an example is very important here. Now, uh, in this process of developing this prompt for Chandrayaan-3, now I could think of these examples like parking a car or maybe a GPS location. Now, you can try different analogies also if you find them relevant, but these two analogies I could find. So with this example of parking a car, what I have done here is forcing the AI to translate the challenge of lunar landing into, say, parallel parking of the car. Now, something every driver can grasp and relate to. Now, that's what the whole prompt hinges on. Now, without the example, the context is just like an academic goal. With examples, it's more fun and engaging. Okay, so we have established the identity, the job, the audience, uh, and then the example part. So what we write in the prompt is use comparisons like parking a car in tight space or any other relatable analogies. So next comes the format. Now format is just telling the AI how to organize the output visually. Now what it does is it prevents so much of post processing after we get the result. Now we have to stop the AI uh, from choosing its own style because we will have in our mind like how the output should look like. So that is why we can define various formats like bullets, table, maybe a code, paragraphs, steps, or maybe Q&A when you're presenting FAQs, for example. So if I ask the AI for top three fastest cars in the world in a bulleted list, I get three facts. Now, if I ask a table, See, you can it forces the comparison. Maybe you can add a column of speed, acceleration, cost, etc. So we can say the AI which type of output we need. And for our Chandrayaan 3 prompt, we are creating a short speech. So we need a structure and length to control uh, the output. So the format instruction would be for a short speech in 500 to 600 words in 3 sections. For example, mission, message, and inspiration. See, now the AI, when it gives the output, it organizes the output into 3 mandatory steps, and the word count is also limited. Now we turn to the second C in the framework, that is the constraints. Now the limits and requirements or the constraints, what it does is it focuses the output, focuses the AI on an output. The idea of limitation here creates better or more focused outputs than when you provide unlimited freedom. It's like harnessing the power of scarcity. You are telling an AI you have infinite possibilities, but you must only use these. Like, for example, length constraints, scope constraints, exclusions or inclusions, or maybe the requirements. Think of them as what you can say is focusing a laser beam. Now, the speech example for the 10th grade students of Chandrayaan 3, uh, what the constraints we can give is the speech should be in plain English, no too much technical terms, and it has to be factual. So the speech would be delivered in plain English and with no too much technical jargons, and it will be strictly factual and verifiable, right? So we have established the identity, the goal, the rule, the structure. Now, finally, coming to the uh, final step in the framework, that is S for style. Now, we are finally uh, telling the AI to add a layer of polish or maybe an emotional impact. Now, style defines how the content lands or maybe how the content is delivered to the user. Now, you can have the facts, but the style determines if the audience feels informed, inspired, or maybe just bored. So the prompt, see, you can simplify the tone, whether it should be friendly or maybe more of serious thing. The emotion can be more towards empathetic thing, or it has the style can be formal or maybe very casual. So in the Chandrayaan 3 example, the prompt finally ends with the statement: adopt a motivational tone filled with sense of emotion and awe as the style component. So that is the full prompt now. We have started with the role and we have ended with the style. We have applied the entire framework to arrive at this point. Hope you all realized how we can transform a one-liner vague prompt, like, for example, explain Chandrayaan 3, to structured prompt using this RTCEFCS framework. Now, let us have a glance or maybe a quick revision. Say we started with role, act as a ISRO space scientist, then the task of explaining the success of Chandrayaan 3, then the context to explain it to 10th grade students, then the example using the analogy of parking your car, then the format in 3 sections or steps, then the constraints, like no technical terms or no technical jargons, it has to be factual. Then finally the style, it has to be motivational, filled with sense of emotion and awe. So it's incredibly simple, right? But it is very powerful, I must say. At the end of every detailed prompt, like when you write a general vague question, and when you compare the output of that vague question with this prompt, the difference in the outputs that you get is, you can appreciate it only when you try it on the when you use it on ChatGPT or Gemini, right? So this is the final prompt with the 7-letter framework. Now, at the end of the detailed prompt, now if you add one hack, say for example, once I write the whole prompt, at the end, if you write, ask me questions for clarifications, if any. Now, what it does is, it it elevates this experience into a truly collaborative approach. Now, this one short phrase, when you add it at the end, it forces the AI to move from one-way command into a brief collaborative dialogue. It creates this, you can say, a mini iterative loop at the start itself. You get a chance to refine your instruction based on its question, ensuring that the AI truly understands your exact needs before it commits to generating potential hundreds or thousands of words. Now it's like a quick confirmation step to ensure, say you and AI, like both are on the same page. Now this is how the prompt looks with the hack. Now you write the whole prompt, and just at the end you add ask me questions for clarifications if any. And this whole prompt you give it to the AI, whichever LLM you are using, right? So this was the whole episode 2 where you have learned the 7-letter framework. Now, what is the uh, what is the challenge for you here is, now you can pause this video, you can build your own prompt. Say take one topic, maybe use start with 2 or 3 components, like not all the 7 components, build it step by step, and before finalizing test it, like say you can use only context and task, or maybe you can start with only role. Now you'll appreciate how the difference in the output should be when you give the when you compare it with the very vague one-liner prompt. So in the next episode, what we'll do is we will test this prompt that we have just now developed for the Chandrayaan 3 example in ChatGPT and Gemini, and we will see how the results vary when we use a weak prompt versus a strong prompt. So until then, enjoy prompting and don't miss episode 3. Thank you.